GT Academy, their second race of the weekend. Their first, yesterday afternoon, took place in rather different conditions to this. We had sunshine, we had relatively mild temperatures. Today, though, it's all feeling very, very autumnal. The rain has been coming down all morning. It's showing no signs of easing off. It is not, though, deterring the hardy Donington Park spectators who are still filing into the circuit ahead of this final round of the British GT Championship later on, and its assorted support programme as well. The cars, as you can see, are out on the circuit. There's just a bit of a delay here in getting them into position on the grid. The race start will be delayed slightly by 2 green flag laps before we go racing, but I'm sure once we do get going, we're in for another really entertaining race. Those that have tuned in throughout the season for the British GT package will have seen plenty of racing from the Ginetta GT Academy, and each and every one of them has been memorable for one reason or another, and I'm sure that the 2 remaining races we've got this season, the season rounding itself out here at Donington, will be exactly the same. Andy McEwen up here in the commentary box to talk you through all of the action, and plenty of action there was yesterday in a race that was won by number 32 Wes Pearce. He won it by 3.2 seconds in the end. There were, though, as is often the case here at Donington Park, some track limits issues and a couple of drivers getting penalties, including a 5-second penalty for Roy Alderslade, who actually won the race on the road but was subsequently penalised after the race, and so Wes Pearce sort of inherited the win, but was within less than a second of the race leader on the road anyway, and so was certainly on the pace was Wes. Angus Whiteside came home second, Ed Akers was third, and it was Roy Alderslade in 4th place in the end, so that 5-second penalty not only cost him the race victory, but also actually cost him a podium finish as we move towards the end of the year. Wes has had Roy has had a number of podiums already this season, and would very much have liked to have added another one yesterday. Angus Whiteside it is that starts on the pole position for this second race of the weekend, though. The grid for this second race based upon the second fastest lap times from the qualifying session yesterday. So Whiteside on pole, Roy Alderslade alongside him. Mackenzie Walker and Wes Pearce make up that second row of the grid. Nowhere on the grid will you find our champion, though. Toby Trice has already been crowned the champion. He won it last time out when the championship were actually racing on the British Touring Car package, and Toby Trice, very well-deserving champion. He won an awful lot of races, especially in the early part of the season, built himself a nice championship cushion and then defended it successfully as the rest of the year went on. And Toby Trice electing not to race here at the final round of the championship, which sort of makes sense, because even having wrapped up the title provisionally, there is a reason that we always use that word provisional, because although he was already had already built up a sort of insurmountable championship lead, there was always a chance still that penalties and such like could have robbed him of the title. So he's decided not to come and race at this final round, and making absolutely sure that he doesn't get into any sort of trouble towards the end of the year that could end up costing him the championship. The car's then on the move for this first green flag lap here. They'll have 2 green flag laps to get used to the conditions, because they have changed fairly dramatically from yesterday. So 2 green flag laps here because the race has been declared wet. Yesterday was all dry running, essentially. There were there was no threat really of rain at any point yesterday. The qualifying session in the morning, the race later on in the afternoon. So this is the first wet running that the drivers will have had around Donington Park, because last time we were here at Donington Park it was pretty dry as well. So the drivers will certainly be a little cautious, I think, in these opening few laps. You wouldn't blame them for being anyway, because Donington Park is notorious for being a little bit slippery. It's quite an old surface these days at Donington. It hasn't been resurfaced in full for quite a number of years, so although it can be abrasive in parts, it does seem to be that as the years have gone by, it's got more and more slippery when wet. And of course, the curbs and the painted white lines and the painted green concrete runoff areas, they're always slippery in the wet, so the drivers will definitely do well to avoid running on those too much. So as I said, Wes Pearce then, it was that inherited that win yesterday. He also won the GTA class within the GT Academy. We have 2 classes of driver. The cars are all the same. They all run with the Ginetta G56, which is this new for 2021 car. And it's certainly been a success, not just in this one-make category, but also, of course, Ginetta G56 running strongly in the British GT Championship. And it's nice to have, once again, that progression from the one mate category up into the British GT4 category. So the level of progression has always been part of Ginetta racing, this Ginetta ladder, and continues to be the case here in 2021. So the second green flag lap then underway here for the Ginetta GT Academy. The cars making their way onto that second green flag lap because of the change of conditions. The race very much declared wet after a bit of tricky weather here this morning at Donington Park. So a damp and drizzly circuit, but the drivers getting to grips pretty quickly, I'm sure, with the conditions out there. Here is how they will line up for this one. Angus Whiteside on pole position with Roy Alderslade alongside him, the two class winners from yesterday up there on the front row. Then it's Mackenzie Walker and Wes Pierce sharing the second row of the grid. Assetto Motorsport ahead of Elite Motorsport, two GT Academy class runners. And then row number 3 is where we will find certainly Ed Akers. We should have Gilbert Yates alongside him. I wonder if Gilbert is maybe a non-starter. Martin Wills and Darren Leung are on the 4th row of the grid together. Darren, one of the front runners in the rookie class all year. Likewise, Danny Dwyer and Tom Hartley Jr. They've been in the mix all season long as well, and they round out the top 10. Then it should be Lee Frost and Robin Greenwood together on row number 6, ahead of Gary Wager and Sean Fleming. And there is a spin on the green flag lap just to go and prove how slippery the conditions are. That looks like it might be John Kearney, who lines up on the 8th row actually alongside Neil Wallace. So the want-to-race driver looks as though he's had a bit of a slip-up here on the warm-up lap. Mike Jordan, not former British GT and British Touring car racer Mike Jordan, another one. He lines up on the 9th row alongside Lee Goldsmith, and then towards the, in fact that is the back row of the 18-car grid. So yes, that spin for John Kearney rather proving my point that Donington is slippery when wet, and even at these relatively low speeds, it seems that it is definitely possible to lose control and spin up those rear wheels. So that is certainly going to be playing on his mind and a lot of the other drivers' minds as well as they head into that first corner momentarily. They will do so, we believe, from a standing start, although the clock has already started running. So a 20-minute race, the clock started at the beginning of the second green flag lap, which is often the way that things work. We've got a busy timetable to get through today, and as much as we want to give the GT Academy drivers as much racing as possible, the addition of this extra green flag lap has meant that we've had to just start the clock running a little bit earlier, so they'll get maybe 1 or 2 fewer laps than they were planning here. But the good news is they get to go back out again later on today. They've got a second race coming up at just after 4:30 local time. There's the Pink Panther of Martin Wills. He ended up in the pit lane yesterday. That in and of itself is not too shocking a statement. The trouble is he arrived in the pit lane backwards after having a spin coming out of the final corner. So Martin won't be wanting a repeat of that in today's race, although it's arguably more likely to happen given these really tricky conditions. Number 10 there at the back of the grid is Lee Goldsmith, so it looks as though we've got everyone pretty much in position. I think John Kearney has carried on as well. You can see there are gaps on this grid though, aren't there? So Gilbert Yates is not there, due to start 5th on the grid, and there was another one, wasn't there, further back that also appears to be a non-starter. So 1 or 2 of them missing. There is John Kearney, so he's going to have to take up a position at the back of the grid now because everybody else went past him and he dropped right to the back of the order. He's not going to be allowed to take his original grid position, although as he arrives on the grid the red lights go out. There is a staller though, and that looks like it's Wes Pierce, the white car that didn't get going, and the race in rather confusing fashion does indeed get underway with Angus Whiteside and Roy Alderslade wheel to wheel into Redgate corner. The grip in the wet may well be on the outside, so the white and blue number 27 of Alderslade should come off the corner better and challenge for the lead down the crane of curves. That's not actually what happens though. It is going to be Angus Whiteside that holds onto the advantage as now they venture into the unknown. How much standing water is there? How little grip is there through this really daunting sequence of corners? It's scary enough in the dry, the crane of curves and the old hairpin. In the wet though, it really is a hold your breath moment. There's Darren Leung, the red and black number 11, just being overtaken there as he goes through the old hairpin. I think that was Danny Dwyer slipping up the inside. Hard to see through the gloom and the spray, and if it's hard for us to see from the outside, you can imagine what the visibility or lack of is like from within the cars. Unless you are the race leader, all you can see out of your windscreen is a big ball of spray and maybe the brake lights of the car ahead of you. There's no one, though, ahead of Angus Whiteside. He leads them up through Coppice for the first time and out onto the exhibition straight. Top three sort of grouping themselves together here. That's Mackenzie Walker in third place, very much going after the top two at the moment. Having dropped back initially through the first corner or so, he's rallied back again in the middle part of this first lap, and he's bringing with him there the orange number 20 of Ed Akers, who started sixth, of course, benefited from Wes Pearce's really slow start. And Wes, yesterday's winner, one to watch now. There he is, the white number 32. And Wes Pearce is just ahead of the number 50 then of Robin Grimwood. As off goes Ed Akers into the gravel down at the Melbourne hairpin. So forget what I said about Ed Akers running well. He had gained 2 places. He's losing a lot more than that now. And there's another spin at the chicane. Is that number 10 possibly of Lee Goldsmith that's gone around? He gets going again, but I don't think we'll see the same from Ed Akers. I think that car is well and truly beached down in the Melbourne hairpin gravel trap, and that may require the first appearance of the Tay. Didn't take long, did it, for the safety car. We'll wait and see on that one, though. You can see the safety car poised, ready to go in the pit lane. Wait and see whether it gets scrambled. So a 1 second advantage for Angus Whiteside at the front of the field. Alderslade second, Mackenzie Walker still third. Tom Hartley Jr. is fourth. I sound shocked when I say that, only because he's gained 5 places on that opening lap, helped no doubt by other people having dramas. Wes Pearce then, of course, lost one, but only one, actually, having started fourth. Wes Pearce, who didn't get going initially off the line, only dropping 1 position as they slither and slide their way through the Craner curves and down into the old hairpin. Some very different lines being used. Ed Akers, meanwhile, by the looks of it, under his own steam, has reversed out of the gravel trap and is now trying to find some purchase on the very wet grass to get back into the race. That's excellent news, though, because it means that there hopefully won't be the requirement for that safety car that I mentioned. So good to see Ed getting going again. He's a long way back, but he was quick on that lap. He actually set the fastest middle sector of anybody on the opening lap of the race. So down the back straight they go. There is the number 10 car for possibly the second time then going around. Certainly a spin at the old hairpin this time for Lee Goldsmith, who started at the back of the field anyway. Leaders through the chicane, and that gap, I would say, is coming down. Angus Whiteside just being caught a little bit here by Roy Alderslade. Indeed, yes, in both sectors, Alderslade has been quicker. He was about a 10th faster in the first sector, locks up and runs a bit wide at the Melbourne hairpin, but then in the middle sector he was about 3/10 faster. So Alderslade going after Angus Whiteside here for sure. There is Martin Wills, the Pink Panther, another that lost ground on the opening lap, 6 positions to be precise, having started well inside the top 10. He was 12th at the end of the first lap of racing. So they head down to the Melbourne hairpin. The top 2 come out of the Goddard's hairpin, and this is going to be a surely fastest lap of the race for Roy Alderslade in second place. Yes, it is. He was a full 6/10 faster than the race leader, a 2 minutes 2.965. To give you a reference to go up against there, the dry times in qualifying yesterday were in the 1 minute 42s, so we're about 20 seconds off the dry pace right now. That is how much water's out there, that's how slippery it is, how bad the visibility is. It's just not allowing the drivers to really stretch the legs of these Ginetta G56 GT Academy cars. But still, we've got the prospect of an entertaining race here as these lead gaps are coming down, because actually in third place, Mackenzie Walker was also faster than the race leader last time, only by 10th, but he's very much in the wheel tracks and in the spray of the second place car, Roy Alderslade, and trying his best to go with him. Up towards McLean's then. There is Mackenzie Walker. He's running second within his class, the GTA class. So actually, all the more incentive to try and catch Roy Alderslade, because the blue and white car ahead of him is leading the GTA class. The race leader overall is rookie Angus Whiteside. As I started to say at the start of the broadcast, there are 2 classes of driver, but the cars are all the same. It's simply down to the amount of race experience that you have. So the rookie drivers have their own rookie class, but it's been a fairly regular occurrence to see them winning races overall throughout the season, and looks as though Angus Whiteside might just be able to do that again here today. Oh, off goes Roy Alderslade. That helps Angus Whiteside's prospects of a race victory, because the second place man, Roy Alderslade, has got it all wrong going through the chicane. There goes Whiteside then. His nearest opposition is now in the form of Mackenzie Walker, and you can see how much closer Mackenzie is as well. So actually, despite the off for Alderslade, it doesn't really let the race leader off the hook, does it? Because he's still got pressure. There's lots of gravel on the road down at the Melbourne hairpin, courtesy of the orange car. I think they're coming up to lap now, Ed Akers. So Ed losing nearly a full lap as a result of the off down at the Melbourne hairpin on the opening lap. So Whiteside leads then, Mackenzie Walker second and less than a second behind him, and this is what happened as they were actually briefly side by side for the race lead, but Roy Alderslade too late on the brakes. He's on the curb as well, which won't be helping, knocks down one of the cones there and has to slow down even more in the runoff area to avoid going through the gravel trap. He managed to do so, but still, as you can see, lost an awful lot of time. We still have almost half the race distance to go, just under 10 minutes remaining, and there you can see he's not a million miles back. He's 3.7 seconds off the race lead, is Roy Alderslade, and we know that he's got the pace to potentially close back in on the top two, especially if this lead battle starts to really burst into life, which I suspect it's about to, because Mackenzie Walker on the previous lap was a full second quicker than the race leader, who seems to be maybe struggling in these conditions, but it always is hard in the wet to be the race leader. I know that we talk a lot about the spray for the cars behind, but sometimes when you're the first driver on the road in the wet, especially if there's not been any wet running prior to the race, which is definitely the case this weekend, you're the first one to find the standing water, you're the first one to sort of find out where the grip is or isn't, and as the chasing car, which is what Mackenzie Walker is right now, you can sort of gauge your line and your speed off what the leader is doing. That looked like Wes Pearce had gone off, number 32, going up towards McLean's corner. He just set the fastest lap, actually, 2 minutes 2.218, so that's a bit of a trend in this race, isn't it? Quick drivers making mistakes. Perhaps they're quick because they're just pushing the limits of the grip levels out there on circuit. So Wes Pearce, I reckon, might just drop down the order at the end of the lap. The leaders, though, are dropping down into the Melbourne hairpin. Fastest on this lap, comfortably, though, is that car, the third car in shot, Roy Alderslade, who was in the first sector, about 4/10 faster than the race leaders, and about the same in the second sector. So the rate he's going to be right with them by the end of the lap. He was 3.2 seconds behind Walker in second place. He's going to take over a second out of him on this lap. Give him another lap, and I think he'll well and truly be making this a three-way fight for the race lead. Across the line they go, 8 minutes and 10 seconds to go, and yeah, top three now covered by 2.5 seconds, and it is a new fastest lap for Alderslade. We're almost sub 2 minutes now. 2 minutes 0.317 there, you can see, is the fastest lap for Alderslade, and he is charging. He was quick anyway before he had that off, and of course, when you do make a mistake, especially when you're challenging for the race lead at the time, the red mist has a habit of descending, doesn't it? And just making you drive that extra bit harder. Another 4/10 quicker than the leaders in the first sector alone is Alderslade, so he's coming. No doubt about that. He's going to catch them. The real question is whether he's going to leave himself enough time to get past them both. Big wiggle there from Whiteside through Starkeys. And there always is a little bit more standing water at this part of the track because you're climbing uphill. The water sort of runs down that hill, and often from one side of the track to the other, so you get these little rivers which at certain parts of the circuit, the Craner Curve's another part of the circuit where that happens, really does make life difficult for the drivers, increases the possibility of aquaplaning, and the chances of breaking yourself and going off the track, as happened to Roy Alderslade down here at the chicane just a couple of laps ago. So they are the last 3 lap times for Alderslade. You can see on lap number 2 he was 6/10 quicker than the race leader. Oh, he's gone off again, I don't believe it. Angus Whiteside, exactly the same, Roy Alderslade, I beg your pardon, exactly the same mistake that he made a couple of laps ago. I was about to make the point that without that off, he would probably be a couple of seconds up the road by now, based on his lap times. But he's got it all to do again. What a shame. The leaders, meanwhile, are almost side by side through the Melbourne hairpin. You don't know where to look in this race, do you? Roy Alderslade, though, is going to be kicking himself now because with 6.5 minutes to go, I'm not convinced that even he has the pace to catch the leaders, because look, as they go through Goddard's, the third place car is only just coming out of the Melbourne hairpin, so that is an even bigger time loss because he went further off the road because he was going even quicker that time when he arrived down at the Melbourne hairpin. So we'll get his lap time in a moment. It's a 2 minute 2.0 for the leader, 2 minutes 1.9 for Walker. They're sort of matching each other now, they've got themselves together. And then we wait for Roy Alderslade to come through, which he does now, and it's a 2 minutes 11, so he lost nearly 10 seconds that time rather than the 3 or so that he lost last time he went off. So Alderslade keeping us entertained, but probably not entertaining himself with these off-track excursions down at the chicane. Hopefully he can keep it clean for the last 5.5 minutes, which we're about to head into. This is the fight for 4th place. They're a long way back from the top 3. 17 seconds is the gap between Alderslade 3rd and Tom Hartley Jr. 4th. And of course that was 27 seconds before Alderslade's latest off. Tom Hartley Jr. holding on to that 4th place from Darren Leung. And then this is Martin Wills, who had got past Gary Wager by 51 thousandths of a second at the start of the lap, but there you can see Wager back ahead again as they head through Redgate Corner. So it's not all about these leading two. There are plenty of scraps going on up and down the order. So out of Coppice Corner then goes the overall race leader, Angus Whiteside. As I mentioned earlier on, he's been one of the fastest, really the fastest of the rookies this weekend at Donington, and he leads that class again today as well. So Angus Whiteside on for another strong result within his class. He was the class winner yesterday, but was 3rd place on the road and some 4 seconds behind the race leader. That became 2nd place overall after the time penalty for Roy Alderslade for exceeding track limits, which he's done a few times in this race, but not really benefiting from it. That's Ed Akers going wide on the gravel that he left on the circuit after going off down at the Melbourne hairpin on the first lap, and in doing so, getting out of the way, as it happens, of the top 2 drivers. He put a lap on the number 20 car, who's also running within the rookie class. Shame for Ed that he had that off on the first lap. He managed to get a podium out of yesterday's race, so in theory has the pace to run at the front of the field, and indeed was running in the top 4, wasn't he, when he went off on that first lap. Right, they're back to the Hartley Jr. Darren Leung battle, and Wes Pearce there, the number 32, trying to go around the outside, but actually it's Leung on the inside line who gets the better run out of the corner. That's interesting. In the wet, you would have thought the outside line would be the place to be, but because of all of that gravel that's been strewn across the track, I don't think that is the case down at the Melbourne hairpin. So the tighter line for Darren working well. Not well enough to get him past the 77 car of Tom Hartley Jr. though, who's defending very nicely this 4th position. Across the line, up towards Redgate Corner they go. Is Leung going to try and go up the inside? No, he's actually very conservative on the brakes, and so Wes Pearce charges around the outside of him on what now is the grippier side of the road, although he's out on the curbs, he's out on the paint. That means he gets a bit of wheel spin off the corner. Just about manages to make that move stick, but he was actually considering going around the outside of Hartley Jr. for 4th, wasn't he? So Wes Pearce, after that really slow start, remember, dropped a number of places, although I think he's lost more ground on the last lap or so. That was ambitious. Around the outside of the old hairpin, that doesn't come off very often. I suppose in the wet you can forgive him for trying to find some grip out there, but that is a very, very risky move to try and make. Wes Pearce, though, keen to get back into this 4th place, and he got to the inside now of Tom Hartley Jr., then to the outside. I think that's the way to go. He's going to carry much more speed off the corner, but Tom places the car well on the outside line there, manages to cover the grippier side of the road as through the chicane. There's been another moment, hasn't there? Now, we think that might have been Mackenzie Walker. Was that number 70? That's yes, because there's Roy Alderslade behind. So Mackenzie Walker from 2nd place has gone off at the same corner that Roy Alderslade's been off at twice already. And he nearly loops it coming out of the Melbourne hairpin as well. So these conditions really are catching people out. And it seems that running in 2nd place is not the place to be going into that chicane. Ah, then here's the replay. So there's Whiteside, he's the leader, and wait for it. Where's Mackenzie Walker? Oh, there's Mackenzie Walker arriving sideways, and he actually looped it completely. So unlike Alderslade, who just ran off onto that tarmac runoff area, that's what it's there for after all. It was a proper spin, that one for Mackenzie. He holds on to 2nd place though. Back to the 4th place scrap now. Still, somehow, Tom Hartley Jr. is hanging on, even though I do think that Wes Pearce is quicker than him. And Wes is now getting sort of backed up into Darren Leung behind. So they're about to go on to the last lap of the race. Should be the last lap anyway. Of course, the leaders are so far ahead of this group that they may just squeeze one more in. The lap times are sort of coming down as the race goes on. Side by side, though, for 4th position, down towards Redgate Corner. And Wes Pearce on the inside line is going to go through. We saw a lap ago how committed he is on the brakes into this first turn when he simply drove around the outside of Darren Leung. And he goes on the inside this time of Tom Hartley Jr. So Wes Pearce back into 4th place, which I think is where he started. And then had that stall or was in the wrong gear or something happened on the line. He didn't move when he was supposed to, and has spent the rest of the race really trying to fight back from that. Wes Pearce, as soon as he got into clean air, sets the fastest first sector of the race as well, at 25.4, about half a second quicker than the leader. So a case of what could have been really for Wes. leaves Tom Hartley Jr. and Darren Leung to battle now for that 5th position. But as we've seen, with conditions like these, there's always a chance that people could drop off the road ahead of you, so important that they keep on pushing here on this, what we think is the final half of the lap. The leader is at the Melbourne hairpin. Right, 30 seconds to go. Angus Whiteside, will he get a checkered flag this time, or will it be a last lap board? It's going to be touch and go this. I reckon he might just squeeze one more in. Let's see, up towards the Goddard's hairpin they go. Angus Whiteside is there, I assure you. You can't really see him through the gloom, but Angus Whiteside is coming out of the final turn. And yeah, he's going to just have time for one more lap. Comes across the line with 5 seconds to go. He probably could have backed off, actually, and made that the final lap. Tom Hartley Jr. is off. He's not the only one either. Another car running wide. Just behind him, who might that have been? Robin Grimwood, maybe? Yes, it is the number 50. So again, the chicane is where all of the action's been, really, in this race. People locking up, running wide. And Tom Hartley Jr. from what was now 5th position, of course. He started the lap 4th, lost that position to Wes Pearce into Redgate, drops down into what is now 6th place. So Darren Leung gets a freebie, moves up into P5, and now Tom busy defending from Grimwood into Goddard's. There is a chance, by the way, that Roy Alderslade could still finish 2nd in this race, because on the previous lap he was 1.4 seconds quicker than Mackenzie Walker ahead of him. And that wasn't the lap that Mackenzie went off on, of course. That was the previous lap. So Mackenzie may be backing off a little now that he's had that spin. Having said that, he in turn was a second quicker than the race leader, so those gaps are coming down. Whiteside, though, is 8.8 seconds clear of Walker, who's only 1 second clear of Alderslade. So second place more likely to change than first, you'd say. Through comes this massive battle pack of cars. This is 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th places, all pretty much together, really. You've got Hartley Jr. fresh off his off down at the chicane, ahead of Robin Grimwood, then Gary Wager, then it is number 23, Danny Dwyer, with the pink car of Martin Wills at the back of the group. Martin's definitely got the right paint scheme for these conditions, hasn't he? Bright Nigglepar day here at Donington Park, and easy to pick out even amongst the spray and the dingy conditions. There's Whiteside, though. He is now on his final lap and is coasting home, really, now. Doesn't need to keep pushing too hard because he's got this race victory pretty much in the bag, he says, cautiously, because he's still got to get through one more corner. But Angus Whiteside, who was 2nd yesterday, is now going to get a race win. He's going to be the rookie class victor as well for the 2nd time this weekend. And Angus Whiteside comes across the start-finish line to win our 2nd race of the weekend in the Ginetta GT Academy, and he does so by a comfortable margin. Now, for 2nd place, is a lot less comfortable because Mackenzie Walker has been caught by Roy Alderslade on the final lap, but Roy doesn't quite have time to get there. So Walker is 2nd, Alderslade's 3rd, and that's significant because that was also the fight for the GTA class victory. Now, Martin Wills is not on the optimum racing line through the chicane. He's outbraked himself as well, and that now scuppers any chance he had of relinquishing 9th place from Danny Dwyer. Tom Hartley wayward as well through the Melbourne hairpin. He's never looked quite as quick since he had his moment a couple of laps ago at the chicane either. Just knocked his confidence. Maybe Martin Wills wide in the background too, but I think Hartley Jr. should just come home in this 6th position. Whereas Pearce, by the way, has just crossed the line in 4th. Darren Leung there in the distance comes home in 5th place. And now Tom Hartley Jr. will come across the line, car number 77, to finish in 6th and round out the rookie class podium. Whiteside the winner in that class, Leung 2nd, and Hartley Jr. 3rd, and there's time for one more spin at the chicane, and this time it is number 33 that's gone around, and that is Neil Wallace in the SVG Motorsport car. And that's not an ideal place to park. Thankfully, he gets the engine fire back up and gets on the move. Still battles going on, though. Lee Goldsmith here, having started from the back of the grid and had a moment on the opening lap, is under pressure from the number 19 car behind him of Mike Jordan. And Mike actually was ahead of Lee at the start of the lap, so this position changing halfway round the final tour. It doesn't look like it's going to change again before the end of the race, though. Goldsmith pulling clear now of Mike Jordan as they come out of the final hairpin. So, across the start-finish line, there they go. The last 2 cars to, if of course they're not the last 2 cars to do the checkered flag now, because Neil Wallace is a bit late on parade, but he'll be back with us very shortly. Angus Whiteside's almost back into the pit lane at the end of his in-lap, though, and celebrating in style as well, sliding around in the wet here at Donington Park, having taken another race victory. Wes Pearce, Mackenzie Walker in 2nd, and Roy Alderslade in 3rd. So here then is confirmation of the race result, our first race of the day, second of the weekend for the Ginetta GT Academy. Angus Whiteside the winner by nearly 9 seconds in the end over Mackenzie Walker, who was only 0.4 of a second clear of Roy Alderslade in third, and they were first and second, as you can see, in the GT Academy class, whereas Pierce was also on the class podium there, 4th place overall, ahead of Darren Young and Tom Hartley Jr., Robin Grimwood, Gary Wager, Danny Dwyer and Martin Wills round out the top 10, ahead of Kearney, Goldsmith, Jordan, Wallace and Ed Akers, 1 lap down in the end after that off on the opening lap. So Whiteside makes his way through into the Parc Ferme area. Angus Whiteside, our race winner then, and he's going to be delighted with that. He's got another race, though, to try and win a bit later on. These cars will be back out on track, all being well, later on this afternoon at about 4:30. Highlights of the Ginetta GT Academy race, and plenty of them as well. It was a fairly eventful sort of 17 minutes of racing in the end after a second green flag lap ate into the start of the race time. And in very tricky conditions, Roy Alderslade looked quick in the opening lap or so, challenging Angus Whiteside for the race lead. It was 4 for the lead initially until Ed Akers went off down the Melbourne hairpin. Looked like the car was beat, but he managed to reverse out and get back going, albeit 1 lap down. Martin Wills had an entertaining race and here charged around the outside of Kearney into the chicane as he started to recover after a slightly slow start. Roy Alderslade in the middle part of the race was quicker than Angus Whiteside, but this, the first of 2 mistakes that he made down at the chicane. He locked up, ran wide on the wet painted curbs and dropped down into 3rd place. And then, a few laps later, Mackenzie Walker, who had inherited 2nd place, also got it wrong at the chicane and had a half spin. He would, though, rejoin and hang on to that P2. The race win, though, went to Angus Whiteside. He serenely continued on his way as all the others around him lost their heads. And Angus Whiteside, your overall and rookie class winner here at Donington Park in the Ginetta GT Academy.
That's free practice. Nobody's looking for quick times, but that free practice time was quicker than the qualifying lap record, which meant that the circuit was in prime condition yesterday for some quick times to be posted. In the second session, we didn't quite get down. I think we missed out on, again, breaking the qualifying record by just a few thousandths of a second. But again, free practice wouldn't usually give you times that are quicker than qualifying records. So the circuit was in prime condition yesterday. So that was the quickest car in free practice in GT3, the quickest car in free practice in GT4.